So days after I made my dreadful mistake of putting AdBlue inside the diesel tank, my place of work, I've made another mistake. Another mistake that's quite grave, and thankfully nothing serious came of it, but if I'd been less fortunate, it could have resulted in my dismissal. It's terrifying to think that I made this mistake because the entire time I wasn't even aware of it. I didn't even find out about it until the following day when I came into work. Right, so what mistake did I make? I'll tell you. One of the firms that I collect from as part of my my daily collection route, I was supposed to collect their mail, and there are these little forms with barcodes printed on them, which I'm supposed to scan. The idea is I scan the barcodes on the forms. They're called manifests, by the way. I'm supposed to take those, scan them, and take the mail and load it in the back of my van. Except what I did the other day was I'd taken the forms, scanned them, I'd taken the mail bags outside, but I didn't load them in the back of my van. I left them outside the front door of the firm where I was supposed to collect them from. And I didn't even know that I'd done this. I was surprised, confused, and alarmed. If anybody knows if there's a word in the English lexicon that encapsulates all three of those adjectives in one single word, let me know. I was positively bamboozled, flummoxed, and I was scared because, unlike the mistake I made earlier with the AdBlue, as I said earlier, I had no idea that I'd even done this. My mind is completely blank from the occasion where I collected mail, where I thought I collected mail from this one firm yesterday late afternoon. Now, the managers have assured me that they were able to fix this in time. They ran over, picked up the mail, and the mail's probably on its way to its destination, its intended destination as I speak. So in the end, it's no harm, no foul. But it could have been so much more serious. There could have been an opportunistic thief roaming around the area who went snooping around, saw the bags of mail, and decided to retrieve it or take it for himself. I doubt there was anything in the bag that was that valuable. It was most likely all stamp mail, or just, it's all nothing more than letters. But this is considered a serious violation in my place of work, and honestly, if I were in charge of that place and one of my employees had done that, I'd put him through a serious investigation and I'd sack him, certainly if he did it more than once. What I find especially alarming about this one particular mistake I made is, how do you prepare yourself for it? It's not, I want to say that it's a simple error that anyone can make, but I'm not convinced it is. Because I've been working at this job for over a year now. I had plenty of opportunities to make this mistake in the past. But yesterday afternoon was the first time I'd ever done anything like it. This is a far more serious mistake than anything I could have made prior, where supposing I just neglected to scan the barcode, or I just hadn't picked up the mail, that would have been less serious than what I had done. But as I've said this, I think I said this twice now, the most frightening and most alarming thing about this is that I had no memory of even doing it. throughout my life, there's been one particularly notorious, is that the right word? There has been one grave fear and insecurity that has been plaguing me for as long as I've lived. It's a fear that I feel is connected to people suspecting whether I have Asperger's or I'm on the spectrum. But it's actually, it's a little separate. It's a bit of a separate matter, but it's equally, if not even more terrifying than that. So my biggest fear, like if I was standing in front of one of those cupboards in Harry Potter and there was a boggart in there, what would be the boggart's form? The boggart's form. It would, well, it's quite abstract in nature and hard for me to describe because it's not one particular thing that you can visualize in your head. Anyway, my biggest fear, the one thing that I live in fear of constantly, the one thing that really makes me unsettled the more I think about it, it's this fear that I cannot always rely on, that I cannot 100% trust or rely on my own perception of reality or my own visual or auditory memory. The idea that I can process an event that has happened only to find out that it happened entirely differently to how I collected it, or an event happened which I had no memory or recollection of, or an event didn't happen which I'm 100% sure did. It's hard for me to put my finger on when things like this have happened before in the past, but I know this has happened more than once. And it is incredibly unsettling. It's unsettling in a way, well, you know, if it turned out that I was suffering from, say, early onset dementia, or I had signs of short-term memory loss, and because I had sustained some kind of brain damage or concussion, that would be a huge relief because it would convince me that at least there is something wrong with me that is resulting in these lapses in my memory, which is making my life difficult. So I would need to visit a specialist and pay money and possibly adapt to the change in my life circumstances. But my biggest fear is that there is nothing physical, no concussions, no trauma, nothing like that in my brain. It's harder for me to explain, but what if my own perception of reality is just not 100% reliable? What am I supposed to do in a case like that? There are lots of mistakes that can be made at your place of work. You can leave behind a pair of scissors and find out that they're nowhere near where you thought you'd left them. You know, I think that's what we refer to as being scatterbrained. And I've always been a bit scatterbrained. But there's a world of difference between being scatterbrained and doing what I just did the other day. Because it didn't even click in my head as I was driving back from work. There were plenty of opportunities for me to check and discover that the mail was in the bag or it wasn't in the bag. I can't even understand. I'm trying to mentally work my way backwards and find out, were there any opportunities for me there and then for me to have stopped and nipped my error in the bud before it got out, before the managers got involved. And looking back, I honestly can't tell, because I didn't even know that I had made that mistake until the following day. And that is what makes it terrifying. And if this kind of thing can happen once, and I'm almost certain that this has happened to me before. I can't point to any specific example, at least not off the top of my head, where this has happened before, where I've falsely recalled information that turned out to be untrue, or I couldn't recall something that was, or something happened and it was entirely differently to how I remembered and visually processed it. If this thing can happen once, it can almost certainly happen again. How do I take precautions for something like that happening a second time? When can I be sure that this lapse in my memory, my cognitive faculties, when can I be sure that this thing will strike? This is not something that I can live with. This is deeply disturbing. It's disturbing. I shouldn't need to explain why it's disturbing, but imagine finding out that you have no control over your actions or your thoughts or your memory. Anyone who's been in a position where they found out they weren't in control, and I got a taste of this experience once when I took the CBD oil and experienced drug-induced psychosis, and that was pretty frightening. We all make the assumption that we're in control of everything, but the idea that you might not be, that is terrifying, and I don't think most people are in a position to understand or comprehend just how terrifying it is. It's incredibly demoralizing as well. To give you an idea of just how frightening this was, each time, there's 25 different firms that I pick up mail from on my normal collection route. And each time I went through the process of walking inside, picking up all the mail, scanning the collection barcode, etc. I had to stop right there, arrest myself in the moment, and think, I'm collecting the mail. Just to make sure that I wasn't daydreaming or hallucinating. I've never needed to do that until now. Has anybody else experienced anything like that? And my biggest fear is that no, that is not something that most people contend with on a daily basis. This is something that's unique to me, and it's what makes me feel so lonely and isolated, because I don't know who I can talk to about this. And if I was suffering from some kind of dementia or cognitive decline, at least there'd be an easy to understand explanation for it. But no, I don't think I am. Well, if there's signs of, something not being quite right up here, well then things like this would be happening a lot more frequently, and it would be a common complaint among members of my family, people who I live and associate with frequently. It would be an actual disability. I probably would have lost my job already. So it's not one of those things. It's not a black and white having a disability matter. It's one of those grey in-betweens where I don't know if I'm quite all right or not. I suspect that if I took a test right now, some kind of memory test, whatever test they have for people who they think have dementia, the test will probably come back negative. So how do I explain what happened to me the other day? Because I don't think mere absent-mindedness or being scatterbrained is good enough of an explanation. My fear is that it's something more serious. There is some kind of blind spot. There are these gaps in my memory. They're pretty random. I can never tell which parts of my memory are there or which are absent, and I'm too caught up in my day-to-day life to pay any attention to it, and it doesn't happen frequently enough for it to be a complaint. It doesn't affect me seriously or often enough to the point where I feel I need to consult a specialist about it. And that's what makes it, well, that's just yet another reason why I find it so frightening, because I don't know what it is. I can't give a simple explanation of why I did what I did the other day. And if I did have an easy explanation, well then I wouldn't be so hung up over it. How do I make sure it doesn't happen again? What am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to walk around with a notepad and a pen every time I'm told some instruction? I'm supposed to write it down? Give me a break. There is no way in hell I could ever live like that. I can't walk around with a list of memoranda. I have to rely on my frame of reference for practical reasons. I'm a human, and most humans have a functional memory with some cognitive processing skills, and we need this to survive in the world. It's unacceptable that I could experience something like this, that this is the thing that could happen to me even once. I don't even know what I'm going to do if it happens again. I'm probably gonna get sacked, but if I do get sacked, that's not even going to be the worst thing for me to worry about. There are other jobs that I want to get. Currently, I'm gunning for 2 different jobs, you see. On the one hand, I've booked another couple of sessions for truck driving, and that's a thing I haven't actually talked about in my videos before. Maybe I'll discuss that at a later date. And also, there's the matter of my surveying degree. I recently submitted my final draft for the exams, and I'm waiting to hear back from the results, and I'll probably hear back from those soon. So there's 2 jobs which are within my grasp. But what good, if I work those jobs, that's not gonna, there's still not going to be any guarantee that I won't experience a brain fart or a brain lapse like the one I did the other day. If anything, the consequences are probably going to be even more severe. Like, imagine me being a truck driver. Imagine me thinking that I loaded something in the back of the truck when it turns out I hadn't. It's only down to chance that nothing in those mailbags was taken away, or that it wasn't anything valuable that was in those bags. But it could have turned out so much differently, and I can't turn my attention away from that. This is a very real, unassailable fear that I have, and no matter what I do, I can never be sure that I've fully conquered or escaped from it. It's always going to be there, like a shadow looming over me. This, and the fact that people will suspect that I have the A word, and that they might not see me as though I'm one of them. This is my lot in life. This is my reality, my lived experience. I don't know what you guys plan to do in your situation, but these are my demons that I have to fight against. Am I going to succeed? How am I going to succeed? I sure have a lot of work to do and a lot of battles to fight, and it's never going to be just one battle. It's going to be a constant battle. I need to be ever vigilant and mindful of these potential mishaps which can happen. And I'm totally convinced that most ordinary people don't need to do this. Seriously, I refuse to believe. I'm fairly certain that most people don't do reckless things like what I just did the other day. I don't know what the explanation is, although I suspect it may as well be biological or genetic. But imagine how liberating it must be to be like that. Imagine being able to take everything for granted, the way you witness it, the way you hear it, the way you remember it. Imagine being able to look back on your memory and not question any of it. That must be incredibly liberating. And why can't I live a life like that? I don't know why, but the fact of the matter is, I evidently can't. And what happened to me the other day is just another example of evidence of that. Oh, anyway, I'll speak to you guys later in my next video. This has been Tracking. You guys take care, everyone.